Hello, my name is Laura Ann Ewald, and I'm going to talk about using puppets to market children's books. Some of you already have children's books and you might like to use puppets to do that. Some of you might want to play with puppets and decide how you make a story out of them. It can go either way, and we'll talk about both. In a generic sense, why would you want to use puppets for marketing your books? My first experience with that is I got a chance to get a table at a Christmas bazaar once. This was a whole gym full of tables, everything from weavers to woodworkers to bakers to, yes, about 8 or 10 book tables. So authors were there with their books. How do you get the attention to stand out so somebody actually stops at your table? Well, I had my table all decorated for Christmas, but then I brought along a friend. I brought along my little snow bear. And I sat there for 4 or 5 hours playing with my little snow bear. And you know what? It got people's attention. Because when they were walking by the book tables without any intention of stopping whatsoever, they picked up on the snow bear and they had to come over and say hello. People of all ages respond to puppets. And if you have movement at your table, people will come to talk to you. Now, did I sell a bunch of books because I had my snow bear? No, I didn't do that, no. But I passed out a lot of flyers and a lot of business cards, and they took them with them because I had interaction with people who stopped to talk to the puppet. So, the second time I did that, I went to the Southern Christian Writers Conference, and the night before they had a Borders in town and a Borders books, and I was so excited I got to go book shopping. But they didn't have any books I wanted to read, but they had a pig. And he was so cute that I picked him up. And you know, I took him with me to the conference the next day, and I carried him with me all day long. And I sat at my table with my pig. And I had a lot of people who saw me later who said, "Oh, you're the pig lady," which I was okay with because it meant they remembered me and they came to my table, and if they didn't buy books, they at least picked up my business card and I had a name for myself. So, puppets can get people to your table, and if you have a children's book, it works even better. Now, going back to a little bit of my own history, I started looking at learning about puppets back in 1984. Spring of '84, I took a class at the University of Washington in Seattle with a woman named Aurora Valentinetti, who's a world-renowned puppeteer, and I got hooked on puppets, and I've been doing puppets ever since. And fast forward a little bit, I started something called the Everyman Puppet Theater, and I was going to do some little puppet shows, and we did a Christmas show every year. Fast forward a little further, I had the people at the Picayune Arts Council ask me if I could do a puppet show for their fall return to school preschool group. So I had a dilemma. What am I going to do for a puppet show? And they only gave me 2 weeks, okay? So I could not write a puppet show and create all these puppets in only 2 weeks. So what I did was I sat on my bed in my room and I looked around the room at my puppets and I said, okay, which puppets can I make a play for? A few years before, I had actually done a puppet show version of The Lion and the Mouse. Frankly, I had the mouse and it was an excuse to buy a lion because I wanted both of them. So we did The Lion and the Mouse. But it wasn't long enough to take care of this whole preschool thing. So I decided to write a couple more fables. And again, I sat in my room and I looked around at my puppets and said, who goes together for a fable? And of course, I had the pig. And sitting right next to the pig on the shelf was my porcupine. And I thought, I can make a story out of that. The porcupine and the pig, the lion and the mouse. And I looked further and I had a wolf. And next to the wolf was the hamster. So I wrote the hamster and the wolf. So we used one Aesop fable and I made 2 more original fables and I had 3 plays. Eventually I wanted to turn these into something better for the Everyman Puppet Theater, which was my theater company. And so I realized I had to stop using Folk Manus puppets. Folk Manus is the name of the company that makes all these really realistic wild animals, and I love them. I have a good 2 dozen of them in my collection, but I had to create original puppets for this show because you got this copyright, trademark, royalty thing going on. So I created a porcupine and a pig. The second thing I wanted to do is to be able to use this play to show kids how to make puppets. So I decided to make paper plate rod puppets. So here are my paper plate rod puppets for the porcupine and the pig. It allowed me to use, I only used materials that could be found in the craft aisle at any box store. Walmart would have them, Target would have them, probably the Dollar Tree would have them, anything like that. He is a paper plate, you can see, he's just a big paper plate. He's got a small paper bowl for his head, another one for his rear. He's got 4 cups on each hoof, and the hoofs are made out of medicine cups. No, I did not go out and drink 4 bottles of nighttime medicine. Instead, I've been collecting these for 20 years, and I have a whole stack of them. So he's got hoofs made out of little medicine cups. His snout is a cut down 3-ounce bathroom cup, and I used that really thin foam board that you get again in the craft aisle for his ears and to cover his nose and cover his hooves and to make his little tail, which does come out a little bit. So he's common stuff, covered with felt and a whole mess of hot glue, probably 2 of the long sticks of hot glue. That's what it took to make him. And then I did the same thing with the porcupine. Again, he's paper plate. He's got a bigger cup on his nose. His feet are felt and pipe cleaners and hot glue, lots of hot glue. He has a small bowl in his tail, and it's all put together with hot glue. So I had my porcupine and I had my pig for my play. When I got done with that, and I happened to like the play, I had a stage that I already built and I had a backdrop I already had. That's how I put it together as a performance. But when it comes to selling books, I thought, why don't I turn this into a children's book? So I decided, since I had the puppets, I would go ahead and make a storybook called The Porcupine and the Pig. And I used my puppets for illustrations. Inside, I had to do them in black and white because if you're like me, you can't afford to do color. But I had them in black and white inside. In the back, I also gave instructions on how to build a stage and how to build the puppets, paper plate puppets. So that all is in this one book with my illustrations of my puppets. So in this case, when I go to sell this book, I want to take my puppets with me so they can be on the table. My good friend Mary Beth McGee, who is a storyteller, came on as a partner with the Everyman Puppet Theater. I asked her to be our narrator for our Christmas show one year, and it went so well, we decided to team up and start doing our puppet shows together. And so now when we do a street fair, we will actually do a performance. She does the narration, I do the puppets, of the puppet show. I have the puppets sitting right there on the table, and I have my books for sale. Now, if I wanted to go to a regular kind of conference or something and I had a regular book table, I'm not going to take these 2 puppets with me because they're too big. And you're thinking, I can't make a puppet like that. But you don't have to do just that way. You can also do it much more simply. I made those 2 puppets kind of big, and they're made out of very nice materials, and they took me 2 or 3 days to make. They're big and they're strong. I can get lots of mileage out of them without them disintegrating. But you can easily make puppets, and if I'm going to take my book to a regular show, I'm going to take the small ones that I made. These are the same kinds of things. They are paper plate puppets. You can see all I did was draw on the back of the paper plate, and I cut it out. It's decorated with crayon. This guy is, his spines are all crayon. His hands and feet are colored with crayon. They've got construction paper, white glue stick. The only thing fancy I did on these is I gave him a little bit of a nose. The pig, I took the end of a bathroom cup and covered it with paper. They've got googly eyes, and they've got a couple pom-poms. But other than that, it's just paper and a glue stick and crayons. That's all they are. And you can do those for your characters and go ahead and take them with you. If they're sitting on your table, okay, they're colorful, they'll attract attention. But also, all you have to do when you're sitting at your table bored silly is get your 2 puppets up and start playing with them. And it's going to get people's attention. It's like the snow bear. People are going to come on and wonder, what is that? And you tell them it's the puppets, and you tell them about your story at the same time you're telling about your puppets. So you can use your puppets to bring people to your table to get them to look at your books. So this was a case where I had a story that I'd done as a puppet show, and I turned it into a book. I have another case here. This is a warm fuzzy, and I made a whole bunch of these warm fuzzies, different colors. I wanted to start selling them. This is Fuzz. His name is Fuzz. And I decided, hey, why don't I do a children's book of Fuzz? And so I did. I wrote Fuzz a book called The Fuzzy Forever Friend. And this book illustrated, and it's got about a little girl who gets adopted by a warm fuzzy. So it's got pictures of the little girl and her warm fuzzy. Again, I have a children's book. It sits on my table, and all I have to do is play with my fuzz, and people will come by and see what it is. Sometimes you'll scare the little kids. You have to be careful with this one, because sometimes they get a little scared. They think it's really alive, but you promise them it doesn't have any teeth, so it's okay. And I actually have 4 versions of this now, in different colors, and eventually I'm going to write 3 more children's books so that I have my fuzzy collection. So that's when you have a puppet. You start with a puppet and you go into a story. Well, what happens if you have a children's story and you want to get your puppets out of it? This is what I hope that all of you will be able to do sometime, if you have a mind to. Again, Mary Beth McGee is my partner. She has, I asked her for one of her children's books, and she has this Pearl's Pool. And it's a story of a Pearl River map turtle. And I have this story here. Now, wanting to turn this into a puppet show. This is when you have to start thinking about writing more. You can't always take a children's story and turn it into a puppet show. Puppet show, you have your puppet show, you can turn that into a story. But if you have a storybook, turning this into a play is a little more challenging, because it's usually too long, too complex, often has multiple characters in it. This story about Pearl, she meets all sorts of characters. She meets a frog, she meets a lizard, she meets a butterfly, she meets a squirrel. She takes a long walk, so she comes to a road. So she has a lot of adventure, and she has a lot of characters in the book. And you basically can't do that with your little puppet show. So what I recommended, I asked her, is to write a short story that could be turned into, using the Pearl character, give her a new story, and have this one be short, so it would only be about 5 minutes long. And most importantly, there's no traveling, and there's only one other character. I'm going back to Aristotle here. Well, remember Aristotle, he had his 3 unities of drama. 3 unities. Unity of place, unity of time, and unity of action. This is the epitome of what you need for a short children's puppet show. I'm not saying all puppet shows will be this way. I have seen photographs of Mozart operas done in puppets, and they're incredible. But for you and I'm sitting there doing a puppet. I'm going to have something short and sweet that I can use to attract people to my books. And so what Mary Beth did is she wrote a story called Pearl the Turtle Saves the Day. And it's a story about a feisty rabbit who's really fast and ends up slipping in the mud and falling into a pool, and Pearl has to rescue him. So I had to create puppets. Now, I didn't want to do just the same as the illustrations. Your puppets do not have to look exactly like the illustrations. You have to use characteristics of the characters. For example, on the pig, that doesn't look like a pig. It doesn't look like a real pig, but he has a short, squat nose. He has cloven hooves, and he has big triangle ears, and he's pink. So when kids look at that, they say, oh, that's a pig. Now for Pearl, I had to make her into a turtle. Not just any turtle, mind you, but a map river turtle. And a map river turtle has a couple of fancy things to it. Number 1, they have a funny ridge down their back. Number 2, Pearl has a pink ribbon in her hair. Turtles don't really have hair, but she's got a pink ribbon in it. Okay, so I need a map river turtle, and I need a pink ribbon, and that's what I made. Again, sticking with the simple materials, that's what I made. So this is Pearl. Pearl does not look exactly like this Pearl, but she doesn't have to. She does have a pink ribbon on her hair. She does have her black ridge down the back, so she is definitely a Pearl River map turtle. She also is made out of very common materials. Her shell is a large paper bowl. Remember, I used a small one on the pig and the porcupine. Her belly is a paper plate that has been cut down. Her head believe it or not, is made out of a toilet paper roll. Her legs are all felt, sandwiched with hot glue and pipe cleaners, so they have some shape to them. So she is simple, common characters, everything you could find, again, at that craft aisle in a box store. And she is Pearl. Doesn't look exactly like the Pearl in the book, but she is a turtle. She's a Pearl River map turtle, and she has her pink ribbon, so she is a turtle. Now for Rusty, I did much the same thing. He has a big paper bowl for his back. He just has fake fur on his arms and his legs. His legs here are actually a half of a paper plate folded in half, and that's how I got that shape to it. And his head is a paper cup that's been cut down. Everything else is hot glue, felt, and fabric. Now, same thing with the porcupine and the pig. When Mary Beth and I go someplace and we want to have a puppet on the table there with us, we're not necessarily going to take these guys. They have very long sticks. They take a big box. And if I need something that will pack easily in my book box, I'm going to take a simpler version of this puppet. And if you want to make a puppet and you don't want to spend 3 days on it like I did, you can make a simple puppet out of a paper plate. So here is Pearl the Turtle in her flat paper plate version. I just took a regular paper plate and I drew on the back of it and I cut it out, and then I added a couple of layers. I gave her eyelashes. You notice she still has the ridge on the back of her shell. Her two main characteristics are the ridge in the back of her shell and the pink ribbon in her hair. So she still has both of those things. So even though this doesn't look any more like the book than the other puppet does, it's still Pearl the Turtle because she still has those characteristics that make her look like Pearl the Turtle. And for Rusty, I did the same thing. I drew on the back of the paper plate. I actually gave him color on the back of his arms because his arms are bent forward. But he's just cut out of a paper plate, and I used colored paper and a glue stick. And that's all they're decorated with, and that's all she's decorated with. So colored paper, glue stick, paper plate, and one of these flat craft sticks stuck together. And I did give them googly eyes as well. So really easy to make. Not exactly like the character in the book, although he doesn't appear in the book, so it's okay. He's got his tennis shoes. He looks kind of sort of like the big puppet that we used for the main puppet show, but he looks close enough that when we look at him, we say, oh, that's Rusty, and oh, that's Pearl. And that's all you need on your table, and as you're sitting there selling your books, you can pull them up, and they can look around, and they can look at each other, and they can move. And remember, the movement of a puppet is what gets people to come to your desk and see what you have. So when it comes to puppets and kids, they are a match made in heaven. Kids like puppets. I like puppets. I guess I'm a kid. I've been making puppets for almost 35 years. And I have a lot of skills and materials and boxes and boxes of stuff to make puppets out of. If you don't, though, all you need is some cheap paper plates, not the expensive ones. You want the plain white ones with no coating on them. And you need some pencils, and you need some colored paper and a glue stick. And maybe if you want to splurge, you can get a couple googly eyes. The thing to keep in mind is that your character doesn't have to look exactly like your illustration. Now you might want it to, and if you do, all you have to do is take the image from your book, enlarge it, put it on some heavy cardstock, cut it out, and put it on a stick, and you'd have your character out here. So you can actually do what you want with it. Give it some movement, bring people in to look at it. So when you're doing your puppets, they're based on your story. You don't necessarily have to have it look exactly like the puppets in the book, exactly as your illustrator created them. You can, if you have your illustration and you photocopy it and you enlarge it and you glue it onto some cardstock and cut it all out, and you can put it on a stick and you can have your character. Just because it's up on a stick and moving at your table will get people's attention to come over to you. You can also create it as a stuffed animal. This is what Mary Beth did with hers. Her illustrator is Lillian Denny, and she created the original Pearl the Turtle, and she created a stuffed animal. And if I were to buy this book, I would want the stuffed animal for my kid as well, and so that's a great match. My puppets don't look like this Pearl the Turtle, though. Except remember, I said that they have the same characteristics. You have that kind of brown stripe down the middle of her head. You have the pink bow. You have the ridge on the back. Actually, her ridge is more right out there. So they kind of look the same. If I'm going to do a puppet show, I'm going to have this Pearl the Turtle. If I'm going to be sitting selling books, I'm just going to bring this Pearl the Turtle. It doesn't really matter how fancy you get with your characters as long as you do it neatly, have it resemble your character, i.e. have characteristics in the same thing. All got the pink ribbon, they all got the ridge on the top, and you keep it moving so that you attract people to come over to your book table. That's what we're all about here when we're marketing our children's books by using puppets. We want the puppets up, we want the movement in them, so we will attract people to come closer so we can say, hey, this is Pearl the Turtle and she came out of this book. And that's what we're going to help. So what we're trying to do is create a living, translated moving, character from your book to get people to want to come to your table, meet the characters face to face. Remember, everyone likes puppets. As long as they're moving, they're no longer, if they're static, they're just like they are in the book. But if they're moving, you can get people to come over and talk to you about your characters and about your book. They don't have to look exactly like the characters in your book, exactly as your illustrator first illustrated them, but they need to have basic characteristics that say, this is Pearl the Turtle, this is Pearl the Turtle, and the one in the book is Pearl the Turtle too. So, that's marketing your books with puppets. I hope that you find this helpful, and I hope you start making some puppets to put in your book box so the next time you go to sell your books, you can have some puppets up to get people to come over and talk to you.